on the news? Yeah, I know. What did you think? Did you love them?
I did love them. I did.
I think Morgan got off there lightly.
Why?
You got
He
the one
looked
with the
proper
glasses.
like a goat dude, didn't he? He looks proper cool.
But Mike, you got the goat with the glasses.
I think it's great. Having had new varifocals this week, I don't have to kind of go like this anymore. I just kind of look down and it's in focus.
Shall we say hello to our viewers? So hello, I'm Lisa.
I'm Kel.
I'm Morgan.
And I'm Mike. Nice to see you all.
So delighted to be joined by Mike as our guest this week. So fantastic to have you with us. You're always a huge supporter of Pride in Surrey, and we are always very grateful. So thank you so much.
It's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm delighted. What's even funnier is I was talking about you two today.
Oh, that's ominous.
In a really positive way. So expect an email, and if they say they know me, deny all knowledge.
I think we had the email.
I think I've had the email.
We've had it, yeah.
Oh yeah, deny all knowledge. Never heard of him.
So should we say hello to Dylan, who's watching, and obviously to Chef, who's watching. You're right, Jace.
Yeah.
Does he actually do any work?
Yeah, he does lots for us.
Yeah, he's very good. I just have this theory though. I've never tasted anything he's cooked.
Well, do you know what we were just saying earlier, that we'd love to have him round and like hire him to be our chef for the evening and have a dinner party. So maybe that might be a workable thing. That would be good.
I'm with you on that because your house is walking distance, well, staggering distance from mine. So
right, okay. So listen, we've got some really good articles, so I think we should probably crack on. And I don't think that we could start this episode of Muse on the News without talking about this amazing thing that's happening in our country. Look at that. And how exciting is that? Look, a 2-0 victory. And last night we were cooking live while the match was on, right? So I was dashing back and forth between the kitchen and the living room to check the score. I think I was more excited than either of the English people who were involved in cooking. But do you know what? It was great. And it was I have a few things that I need to say, but I'm going to talk about the positive bits for me first. I just thought it was brilliant to see the stadium with plenty of people in there having a great old time, and what a victory for England. First time in a very, very, very long time, isn't it?
I think it's 55 years since we beat Germany.
Yeah, so a huge sort of achievement there, most definitely. And I think it's kind of what we need, like this. We need this. We need some excitement to boost us and get us enthusiastic and excited. And, you know, it was definitely great to see. Now, the negatives for me. Well, I tell you what, I just don't get this, right? Because in Ireland, we don't have this issue, and I'm also, I have to say, not a football.
Do you not have football in Ireland?
No, hang on.
Okay.
I'm not a football fan, although I do love international football because I always think you've got to get behind your country, right? But you know, club football doesn't really do it for me and never has.
Does Ireland have a football team? Just checking. Sorry, carry on.
Look, I'm just going to say Italia 90 was great for us, okay?
Sometimes they kick a rugby ball, don't they?
Yes. My sport is rugby, and I love rugby. What I found really bizarre was the booing. And there was booing during the German national anthem, which I just...
Really? That's awful.
Yes. I just find that abhorrent. And there was booing for people who took the knee. And I think it's a really sad thing to see. I don't think that there's a place for that in sport. No. You know, I just don't feel that there is. And, you know, I struggle to understand it, to be quite honest.
There's not a place for it in sport. There's just not a place for it, is there? It's just unacceptable. Yeah. And it's, can I make a confession?
Yes.
This is really embarrassing. And I had in my mind, you know, football match, kickoff time. What time is it normally happen?
Oh, I don't know. Yesterday was 5 o'clock.
I know, but normally it's 7, isn't it?
Yeah, it's normally a bit later.
In my mind, 7 o'clock kickoff. That's fine.
Do you miss it?
Totally. It's when people go, yeah, England have won. It's kind of yeah. I don't get the booing. I don't get I just don't get that. It's so rude.
It's not sporting, is it? It's not actually what we don't teach our kids.
It's not what sport's about.
No. What do you reckon, Morgan?
I'm not much of a football fan, and I don't really follow football. So it's kind of, but in terms of,
hang on, can I just put this in here? Boo!
I think, like, obviously, I've been following kind of the reaction to the taking of the knee, and I think it's really disappointing that so many people are booing someone taking a stand or taking the knee against racism. And I think, especially in football, there's been so much over the years of racism within football, and I hope finally that kind of the football as a community is finally, hopefully, starting to kind of take action and notice of it. And I think it's really disappointing that people think, I don't know why, are they booing because they disagree with them taking the knee, or they boo because they actually like racism, or is it just they've been, and I don't, it's just, I think it's just the whole, they almost, everyone said to boo, so people start booing, and I think it's really kind of disappointing collective herd kind of mentality to it. When if you ask any of those supporters who did boo, oh, do you think that racism is a good thing? They would obviously say no. They would be against it. They would be anti-racist.
Well, you'd hope they'd say no. You'd hope.
You hope they would.
Yeah.
I just don't, it's really disappointing. I find that kind of people are somehow offended by a team taking action in their own way against racism.
In a really passive way, in a really respectful way. That's the thing, isn't it? That's met with such aggression and hate.
And it's quite disturbing to hear they were booing during another nation's national anthem, and it's kind of that is massively disrespectful of another nation. But it just feels like racism through and through. It's just awful.
Totally. Can you imagine how much it would have kicked off if German fans had booed our national anthem?
Exactly.
There would have been riots.
Totally unacceptable behaviour, and I think those that were involved in it should be ashamed of themselves. And I do wonder, as you've said, Morgan, is there a herd mentality there? Do people just go along with what others are doing and not really think about it?
I think it's also comes from our political leadership as well. Is I think there have been senior politicians over the last few months that have said that they think it's fine for people to boo when footballers take the knee, or they don't. And I think it's kind of, you may disagree with what people have now ascribed taking the knee with the BLM movement, and you may disagree with the organisation, but it's taking a stand against racism, and I think that's something we should all get behind. And I think it's this kind of performative populism. Yeah. Really, that's what it is. It's kind of performative, really, of this. Why are they all complaining about racism? We're not racist. I'm like, well, you may not be racist, but there is racism, and we have a racism problem that we actually need to tackle. And I think, and I'm really glad that England won, and that England, and I think that kind of is a lot of. If England had lost, people would have been saying, they would have been attributing the two together and all of this. And I think now we actually get to see that England football team go to the next stage and take the knee again and continue to make that stand. Because I think, and it's more power to the England football team for doing it. I think it's great.
I hope they do continue to take the knee. That's the thing. I don't want them to be put off, I
think what disturbed me though was some of the Facebook comments, after England had won, some of the very racist comments against Germany were quite shocking on Facebook going around last night, and that's quite sad because people just seem to repost things without actually thinking about what it means. And it was quite disturbing to read from people I wouldn't expect to repost things like that, and they're clearly just not thinking about the impact and what actually they're reposting. It is great that we won, but actually there's a limit to how you still have to control how you behave in that.
And then I think whenever you start to criticize people for if they've been reposting stuff and they think it's them being humorous about Germany or whatever, and I think then they start going down this line of using "they" as a kind of a very vague term, and it's like when people then would start criticizing for being unpatriotic and not supporting England winning. And that's not what this is about. It's about we're all supporting England team, and it's great. But what it is actually is saying, that's unacceptable behaviour for you to be reposting this or to be saying this. It's not acceptable. And just because it may have been done in a humorous, in your opinion, in kind of a humorous banter way, that does not excuse it, and it's not acceptable.
I agree with you entirely.
Calling it out.
Yeah. And it comes down to respect, doesn't it? It's respecting one another. And actually, we've got to respect one another. And that is so important.
And it's also that respect as well, is that if you disagree with someone, and if I disagree with someone because they posted something, if I respect them, I will tell them that I disagree with them and they are wrong. If I just keep my mouth shut, I'm not, in my opinion, respecting our friendship, because they need to know that they've offended me, or that what they're posting is offensive. And it's also, I just want to kind of make the point of that. And I think footballers recently, over the last year and a half, 2 years, have really demonstrated a kind of a level of community action that hasn't really, I don't think, has come from the football community in the last, in the recent while, especially with people like Marcus Rashford, who have been active campaigners on free school meals, and they've been using their positions of privilege. And Marcus Rashford doesn't come from a position of privilege. He finds himself in one, and he's using that as a platform to actually highlight the real problems and divisions that we have in this country. And I think that's a great force for good. And I applaud Marcus Rashford and others, and people like Gareth Southgate, for really kind of highlighting and actually being voices for change, rather than just being footballers. I think they're much more than footballers.
And I was really, one of the other things that I think we've spoken before on this show about sports people and the perceived inability to come out if they're members of the LGBTQ community. And I think that is a very real thing. I think it is very, very difficult for them. And that's why we don't see very many, particularly in football. But I was really delighted to see the captain's armband was Pride colours, and the stadium was covered in Pride. And I know it was sort of corporate sponsorship and it's Pride Month, so you kind of expect it. But it's lovely to see, and brilliant visibility. And if there's one positive thing that I just want to round this one up on, I was listening to the radio earlier on, and there was a woman on who was at the match with her husband and her children, and her children turned around to her and said, "But I don't understand. Why are they booing? Why are they booing?" And the children didn't get it, and they thought that it was entirely wrong and it shouldn't happen, and they were disgusted by it. And I think that's a real sign of hope.
There's hope, isn't it?
Feel that, then we've got hope for the future. So.
But it's also, just before we round this one off, I think it's what you were saying about how in the past footballers have struggled, they've not been coming out. And I think that if you look at how kind of the civil rights movements have progressed over history, there's always been kind of a progression of acceptance for certain for different groups of people. And I think as football community moves forward, I think they are going along a trajectory where they're going to reach a point where I think it's going to be completely open for LGBTQ people to be out as professional footballers. And I think with the pride colours over the stadium, and yes, it's corporate sponsorship, but what a great time to actually highlight the community, national coverage. And I know we've discussed this kind of the corporate involvement in Pride. It's like, you know what, there are times when I'm fine with corporate involvement in Pride, but it really does project Pride out to millions of people.
In an environment like that, where it's so difficult for people to come out, it can only do good, can't it? Basically, at the end of the day, and
it is kind of directly pushing Pride into the living rooms of millions of households. And it's just, there could be that one child that is sat in their living room with their parents who are gay or lesbian or trans or questioning, and that one thing they see watching the football with their family could give them the confidence to actually say, you know what, mum and dad or whoever their guardian is, it's like, you know, I am LGBTQ plus, and I think that would be that's a good thing.
Fingers crossed, though.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Okay,
great stuff. Lovely.
Right.
Okay. So, the next one is yours, Mike.
Is it? Oh gosh, this is a story that's been in the news all weekend, and it's been an interesting story. And people are going to be filled with so many different views as to what's right and wrong. What has amazed me with this story, though, that the focus has been on whether a certain person broke COVID rules or not. And it's the whole debate has been around whether Matt Hancock broke COVID rules, and then the debate's been around, you know, how did somebody manage to access the CCTV to see him kissing his aide? And that's gone on and on. But it's, for me, it's buried the real crux of this story that for me is absolutely earth-shattering and should be the pure reason why he should have been sacked immediately for his actions, and should have resigned immediately for his actions if he wasn't sacked. It's got nothing to do with COVID. It's got nothing to do with the CCTV. He is a married man with 3 children who had an affair with a married woman with 3 children. And that, in my mind, breaks the moral and ethical code that MPs, those in society, should uphold. And I think, you know, it just shows that where the government is in many ways, and the fact that the issue is, were they too close? Not, hang on a second here, there's 2 married people snogging in a public forum, and that's unacceptable behaviour.
I think the upsetting thing about it all actually was
it's the 6 children that are involved.
His statement, both his oral and his written statement, neither one of them made reference to what he's going through, right? And even if you're leaving a marriage and you're not happy, have some respect, and have some respect for the mother of your children and for the woman that you've just, you know, put through that in the public eye. To make an apology would have been the correct thing to do, and he didn't do it.
And where have morals gone? You know, fair enough, he broke COVID rules that he'd set. I get that, and I get why people are upset about that. But hang on, he broke, you know, a moral code here that, you know, whoever you're married to, whatever your relationship is, you're committed to that relationship. And I think it shocks me.
Yeah, it's like I think coming from, it's almost like the fact that he had an affair isn't what bothers me the most. And I think if his marriage had broken down and they were living separately, I think it would have been
totally different ball game. Yeah.
But I think the fact that, according to reports, that his wife had no idea, and that their marriage was as it was
until the night before.
Until the night before, when he was then given, he was told that the story was going to break. So he thought, I now have to tell them that tell my wife that I'm leaving it. And I thought
they're now separated, which is fair enough. But it's just the fact that that story's almost been buried in the news, and that should have been his reason for resigning, not because he broke COVID rules.
The thing is we've got a prime minister that's just as bad, haven't we? So just hi, Jana. Thanks for tuning in.
Hi, Jana.
It's also the kind of the hypocrisy, and that's what I find with politicians as well, is that they will parade their families for political gain. They will make speeches and they will pursue policies that always seem to suggest that they are pro the nuclear family, pro traditional values, but behind closed doors he's having an affair and going against his own words. If he'd never pursued any of this, then I could almost get my head around it. But it's the hypocrisy that it's the hypocrisy of it. And it's the fact that he essentially has gone, I've been caught, so now the only reason I'm admitting of this is because I've been caught.
There's so many facets to the story, isn't there? And what's interesting actually is the way it has been reported in the press, regardless of the situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
The way the press have gone for it. So rather than saying, actually, you know, bit wrong, bit of a wrong un to do that to your wife, whatever, but the way the press have reported it, COVID rules, and surely they would have been in a work bubble anyway, so that wouldn't have actually been applicable to these people, and why was there a security camera in his room? Did he, and they've reported on all these elements.
Yeah,
it is intriguing as to why cabinet ministers have security, cameras in their room. I've read that
he said it was in the room, but it looked more like it was in the corridor, to be honest.
No, it was in his office.
Yeah, they've shown them now, and they've actually got the big, very open and honest, huge cameras in their offices. But now they've all had their offices swept, to make sure that they're not going to be caught fondling their aides bomb. But
I just feel for his wife and his children and the husband, wife of his aide and her children. I just think, there's 6 children caught up in this, that, one day last week, everything was great and hunky-dory at home. And then suddenly the next day, It's not, and it's just the impact that's going to have on families. I just think is terrible. But like you've said already, though, my brain's just gone, Morgan. You know, how can the Prime Minister have a moral standpoint on this when there's been so much hypocrisy in everything? It's really difficult.
And I also think it's completely bypassed the relative failures that he, as the Secretary of State for Health, kind of has overseen during COVID lockdown. The high number of deaths, the releasing of COVID positive patients into residential care homes, the failure of the track and trace system, which all kind of would go through his department. I think it's almost been brushed under the carpet by him having an affair. Now we've got someone else. We've got a new one in.
We've got Javin now.
We've got Javin in, so there's no problem. And
we saw. Sorry, Morgan, to interrupt you. We saw with the release of the text messages that Dominic Cummings released that Boris himself also said he was effing useless.
Yeah.
You know, going back some time, and then subsequently following this, you know, Sun front page, he said, well, I've had an apology and that we're drawing a line under it. And as far as I'm concerned, we've put this to bed now.
So it then shows a Prime Minister with no spine.
Yeah, but then he accepted that resignation and said, I'm sure it won't be long until you're back in public service.
Yeah.
Shocking.
And it's all like, and it's with Matt, and I don't want to get too political, but it's like for years, Matt Hancock has been Health Secretary, and for years it's always been rumoured that subsequent Prime Ministers have tried to get rid of him. So David Cameron, then Theresa May, and now Boris Johnson all tried to move him. But he always seemed to hang on because it was the rumour that he knew where all the bodies were buried, politically. So now all of a sudden, that and it seems all a bit too convenient in my eyes. That it's just now Matt Hancock's gone, but he hasn't really fallen on his sword over anything. And now they're just trying to brush everything under the carpet. And then they had senior Conservative politicians out the days after his resignation saying that when he resigned, he put his family first. It's like, he clearly hasn't put his family first when he's left his wife and children. And
he was internally. You saying that they've been trying to get rid of him? That was somebody within the inner ranks there that's released those tapes, and that's probably exactly why they've got those in the offices. Something on them for when they've got a minister that won't budge, that knows too much. That's it. We've ruined your life, mate. Because actually, they have ruined his life. Because whatever we may think of his behaviour, it could have actually just been a little fling, and his wife and his kids could have, been none the wiser, and things could have maybe perhaps moved on. But actually, what they've done is not just make mistakes, not just shattered his life, but shattered his wife's life and his children. You know, I think. Who was it that said, those poor kids having to go to school the next day?
It was one of our kids.
One of our kids actually said, can you imagine going to school the next day knowing that your daddy's all over the paper and, your daddy's been that mean to your mum? And, it's those people, isn't it? Who's
absolutely. I think that's what concerns me on the moral and ethical side of it. It just seems to have been missed because it's all been about something else. And that saddens me that, our media has focused on the alleged breach of COVID rules rather than the human element and the failings of people to say you should be resigning because you just done something you shouldn't do.
They're supposed to represent, they're supposed to be just a little bit, a notch above to
ministerial code. You're meant to be slightly better than that, and it just makes you, if they can forgive and move on with things like that, it really does make you worry what else is going on, doesn't it? Really.
Well, Jason has just commented and said, "Can you imagine what else the security tapes might have picked up?" It's obviously been going on in the office for a while. So yes, quite right. And Yana has said, this government is a joke and we need to replace them all. And what I would
love to have security tapes in my office. It'd be the most boring movie I've ever watched.
It's just at times it's just been so baffling watching our government, the way it acts, and it's just they seem so disconnected from reality.
Yeah.
And it's not even, I can understand mistakes. I understand that people make mistakes, and that's we should be willing to accept that people make mistakes. But it's just this disconnection, complete disconnection.
And the error, I think, is right. We identified it at the beginning. It's the response to that mistake was off. It was.
It is, and it's the fact that it's the fact that his colleagues backed him, and you kind of go, oh, it's really sad that people think it's okay having an affair. I just find that, you know, it's not acceptable in any relation. It's just not acceptable.
No, it's not. But, you know, also then following on, when you do make a mistake, it's about dealing with that in the right way and making the appropriate apologies.
Yeah.
And he hasn't.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah,
absolutely. We could go on for hours on this.
He's not sorry he's crushed his
No,
wife.
he's not sorry. He's not sorry. He's sorry.
He's never
been
said
found
sorry,
out.
has he?
Yeah.
He's not said sorry yet.
No. And I think the fact that he just let his wife know that he was not even that he just had an affair the night before, is that he was leaving her the night before, and he woke up their child at 8 o'clock and told them that he was leaving.
So she's
and I was like, that
in the paper as well, you know.
Yeah, and it's not just Matt Hancock saying, "I'm really sorry, I've had an affair. Our marriage has broken down. We need to discuss this." It's, "I've had an affair and I'm off."
Yeah.
It's
now I've been
out. It's in the paper tomorrow. I'm going to wake the kids up and tell them I'm off to a hotel. See you later. Thanks for all the fish.
And that's
it's disgusting.
That's disgusting.
Yeah, shocking.
Anyway,
I'm going to wind this.
We're going to wind this up.
We could go on for hours on this one, can't we?
The chap that our colleague affectionately calls Hat Mancock.
I can't tell you what one of my colleagues calls him. It's not printable.
Is it Jason?
It's not Jason on this occasion.
I'm really excited about the next story, Morgan. It's your one.
Yes, I'm really moving on completely to a completely different topic, and actually a really positive story, in my opinion, was the 3rd annual Trans Plus Pride, trans liberation and non-binary power, kind of the slogans that where thousands of people gathered in central London this last Saturday for the 3rd ever London Trans Plus Pride. So I saw this and it was great that it was a kind of a process like Pride, but it was specifically dedicated to trans and queer people, and it's such great to see. And it was the one bit of the article that got me is that they gathered in, I think, Wellington Park. So but it was that they were still coming in for hours, and that a person on the side of the road watching could have watched for 10 minutes as the parade came past them, and that's just really made me so happy that it's such a big impact of a protest like this is happening. And I'm glad that they were able to do it safely within COVID restrictions. So it's kind of, if you look at the article,
sorry, you can't finish what you're saying. Sorry.
I was saying, it's like, if you see the article, there's lots of pictures, and it's just really great seeing. And it's not just trans people that were there, but it's trans people, allies, families with trans children, trans adults with their children, it was the slogans that are kind of protect kids, stop banning puberty blockers, supporting Black trans lives matter, and it's really, and it was
people that believe people have
good old, and I was saying good old fashioned queer activism. And I use queer. I know a lot of people don't like the word queer, but I'm using it as a descriptor of good old fashioned LGBTQ plus activism, and that's what kind of really warmed my heart.
Yeah, a couple of things that I want to say. In some of the information that I've read, the organisers, who are an anonymous team, right? So they haven't sort of publicised themselves or put themselves out there, which is also quite cool. But they said that they did it off their own steam. They didn't necessarily do it in cooperation with the Metropolitan Police, and they did it that way because they wanted it to have the spirit of the original Pride, the beginning of Pride at the Stonewall riots. And I thought that was, not that it was riotous in any way, it was perfectly peaceful, but it just sort of that spirit, I suppose, was brought in, and I think that was really good. The second thing, exactly. The second thing I wanted to say, a friend of ours, Claire, was there, and she got herself into a perfect vantage point, and she managed to record the should we call it a parade? It is a parade, isn't it?
Parade passing.
Parade passing from start to all. Well, I think she gave up actually, and it was the video that she took was 15 minutes long.
Wow.
and there was still
Throngs of
people coming through at 10 abreast, right? So I don't know how you even begin to measure that crowd. I know that there's no specific figure in the article, is there? They say thousands.
No, thousands, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Claire was kind of saying, no, it's 2,000 or 3,000. I think it was way more than that. It was huge, and you're right, Morgan. Just how fantastic to see that solidarity, and I really wish we had been able to go, because I would have loved to have been part of that.
Yeah.
And well done to everybody who did go. I know there was loads of people from Surrey who went. I know loads of people who were there, and fair play and well done for doing it and representing our community so brilliantly and peacefully. And so creatively as well. I mean, some of those cards were just brilliant, and it was just fabulous to see. Lots of noise, lots of really vibrant, clear spirit. I'm delighted about it.
I bet Preeti Patel had the right on.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. What's odd though is when you think of how big an event it was, and it went off so peacefully, how little it attracted the mainstream media attention.
It never does. It never
does.
does.
Really sad, isn't it? Really sad.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what
can I link something into that? I know I told Lisa about this earlier this week. I was really thrilled this week to get, I'm never thrilled to get a brown envelope through the door from the church, the denomination. And it's quite unusual, but I got one through this week, and it was, I'll just hold it up so you can see it. It was diverse gender identities and pastoral care. And it ties in with it's a report and a booklet produced by the Church of Scotland that the United Reformed Church has sent out to all of us ordained ministers. And it's about how we care for those with diverse gender identities and how we show them that God loves them and that we as Christians want to walk that journey with them. And I just thought, I wanted to shout hallelujah. And that's why I sent it to you, Lisa, to say, look, I'm just so thrilled to have got this through the door from my denomination saying, we want you to be able to do this as ministers. We want to empower you to support the LGBTQ plus community. And it's just so powerful.
Church, though, aren't you, Mike?
Yeah. I mean, very much so. Very much so. But it was powerful to get it. And it's sat in my reading pile, which is quite large. But it was just thrilled to get it. And I emailed our Secretary for Equality and said how thrilled I was. And it was just brilliant to get it.
Yeah, and only last week we covered a news article on Muse by where the Catholic Church had, ripped one of their priests a new one because he flew a pride flag for Pride Month. So we've still got a long way to go. Well, yes, we've got one too.
It's a long way to go, and it's disturbing that people feel. We could spend all evening debating the theology of it, but it's disturbing that people feel that it's right to judge people and not to love one another. I just found that's disturbing, and that to me is about how the church should love one another.
What I liked the most about this Trans Plus Pride protest was that it was a part of our community that for too long have essentially been asked to sit on the sidelines while others pursue rights. Gay and lesbian people got rights much faster than trans people, and I think it's great that they are taking centre place within our community at the moment and really fighting for their rights. Because I think it's really essential that we remember the original Stonewall riots were led by trans women of colour, drag queens, and gay and lesbian people. And I think it's really important that our community as a whole has a common fight. We all have our common fight, but within our community, our individual communities have their own fights as well. And it's essential that we ally each other and we all fight together, fight for our shared fight, but also actually lift people up, lift our trans brothers and sisters up, and actually say, you know what, it's your time to shine. Please shine. I'm supporting you. And that's what I was really so happy about with this Trans Plus Pride, was that it was kind of the trans community taking centre stage, which I was so happy about.
I'm going to give Morgan a little bit of a cricket clap there, because that was actually beautifully put. And I think we couldn't end it in a better place, actually.
Brilliant. Well said.
I'm not even going to do a roundup. You've done it. Well done.
No, we need to.
Next. It's your article, my darling.
Yeah, it's my article next. Let me find it. Okay, so this age-old problem. Well, it's not actually an age-old problem. It's a problem that we seem to have been looking at over maybe the last 10 years, perhaps maybe as many as 20. And this is childhood obesity. Just wait for that to come up. What they're basically now talking about is, should our children be weighed in school? Now, I don't know when they stopped doing this, but I can remember that, oh, crikey. I can remember years ago when the world was in black and white and I was at school, we were weighed. We had like a yearly thing where we went in and they made us do the bleep test, and they weighed us, and they did, you know, those machines, those little pincher things where they do your fat measurements, and they, you know.
And they moved the weights along, didn't they?
Yeah, they do all that. And I can remember them doing that in school. And sorry, I'm having real trouble. Like one of those websites that only wants to show me things we don't want to see. I can remember being weighed in school, and it wasn't something that was done away from your peers. It was like, you know, you'd get the gym teacher come and put the scales in the middle of the gym. She'd get you all up and she'd weigh you and she'd go, "You're a bit of a fatty, aren't you?" and move you on. And, you know, there'd be that one kid that does marathon running anyway, and he can do the beep test until the school bell goes. And there'd be the kids that can't do it. And we were shamed. We were absolutely shamed for being overweight or underweight or not the right body type or having folds in the wrong places. And it was horrific. And it was horrific for us then. And to bring that back, I'm very glad that they seem to have stopped this, but to bring this back now for our children who, I mean, let's face it, many kids go through the little puppy fat stage, don't they, at school? And we, you know, we grow taller and older and wiser with our eating habits. And, you know, as we enter adulthood, things tend to level out for most of us. To do this to our children and to create, you know, to create that stigma and to put even more pressure on our young people to look a certain way and to behave a certain way and act in a certain way, I think is absolutely abhorrent.
Yeah.
What do we think, guys?
I think, well, as an obese adult and I was an obese child, I remember PE being dreaded. I remember hating the whole idea of having to get changed in front of other people. And it does seem like this is some kind of way to shame children and shame parents and say, you know, you're rubbish parents, that your child's fat, and look at all of these great kids that they're the ones who always get special treatment when it comes to sports. And it's this pursuing division and putting people into their own into groups of fit and unfit, fat and thin. And yet, yes, there is an obesity problem. There is an obesity problem worldwide. That is a well-known fact. But you don't solve it by shaming people, because all you're going to do is make obese people and people who are not obese feel worse about themselves, cause complexes, cause eating disorders. And it's this whole kind of reactionary approach to things. The best way to stop being obese, in my opinion, and I really don't take my own advice, is regular exercise and healthy eating. That's how you, not by weighing some child, some 12-year-old who is self-conscious about their body because they're starting puberty. They could be even questioning their own gender, so that even adds another level of complications onto this. And it's this whole unthinking response to an obesity problem that we have, and it won't solve anything. No, it's just, all it does is
causes more problems
and makes people in positions of authority feel powerful because they can point at a child and say, "You're fat."
And I think it's also that question of who's going to do this in schools. You know, is it a teacher or is it a nurse? It puts more pressure on the school system. You know, when I was in the army, they brought in BMI testing, and it was very amusing that all the rugby players failed. Yeah, simply because the size to play rugby meant that they weren't within the BMI scale. So they were classed as obese, which is just ludicrous. And it gave them immediate body image issues. It put a stigma on them, and they were, you need to lose some weight, mate, type thing. Actually, I play rugby. What more do you expect?
Yeah.
And it's just so judgmental. It's struggling. And as Debbie said in the chat, you know, there's enough pressure on children already. Let's take some of this away. It's not needed. And I wonder who it's come up with it. Maybe he's just resigned. Who knows?
Well, there's a couple of things that I want to say. They do actually weigh children still. They do their height and weight at a couple of points through their primary education. And they do that. And Mike, you might remember getting a slip of paper home with the kids, and the slip of paper used to go in our house directly into the bin. But a bit like you, Morgan, I've always had a weight problem. My whole entire life I've battled weight. And it is very difficult. I do think I don't agree with weighing children. I don't agree with shaming them. I don't agree with that. But I do think we have a real problem in this country, and I think we need to find better ways to tackle it. And kind of the way I've always adopted, the approach I've always adopted here is, we talk about being healthy, and we talk about healthy food, and we talk about why it's a balanced meal. And actually, no, you can't have that, because actually we had a bit of a junky meal last night. So, we're going to be really good, so like we kind of do it that way. And I speak about my weight with the children, and I do it in a positive way. I don't want to give them any complexes, and our kids, none of them have a weight issue. I mean, they're really lucky, right? They're lean as anything, and so they don't need to be concerned. So our focus in this house is certainly about putting healthy things into your body, right? So that's what we try and do. But I do think we need to make sure that we have those conversations with our kids, and we need to try and instill those healthy habits. And I know that is not the same thing, but I just think there is a train of thought that says that you shouldn't speak about it at all to your children, and I don't actually agree with that.
No, I agree. That's wrong.
Yeah, there's that school of thought. Sorry to interrupt, but that being slimmer equals being healthier, and that isn't true. There are some people with fuller figures who could outrun me 10 times over, and it's got nothing to do with size. It's your behavior within your body, isn't it?
And that's my point about the rugby players when I was serving. They would hands down beat me in any contest, doing anything. But according to the judgment of some people, they were overweight, and it's not helpful. And you're right, that healthy conversation with your children is amazing, and you've just got to have that healthy dialogue rather than making a judgment that's going to then put a stigma on people.
And I think it's also,
I know that.
Should we let Morgan talk?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
And I think it's also kind of the attitude of the school as well, that the school has to have a positive approach to healthy eating and healthy lifestyles. And it's not just you have PE once a week. I think this raises so many more questions, but it's like sports and kind of physical activity should be a much more commonplace thing in curriculum. And I would say 3 times a week for like 20 minutes, it's exercise and running about. It doesn't have to be football. It's just it's ensuring that there's physical activity, that the food that the school provides is healthy, and it's not the cheapest option, which often is normally what happens when contracts are cheap. But it's also providing the support for families that may find themselves in difficult situations financially, meaning that they struggle, that they think that they may have 2 or 3 children, and the food shop is a big expense, so they may plump for cheaper things which are maybe slightly less healthier. And I think it's just this whole idea of just weighing kids and saying you're overweight or you're fat or you're thin is kind of really counterproductive to.
It's not the solution at all.
It's not the solution.
No, it's not the answer, is it?
And I think it does then come back to the funding for schools. Schools don't have enough money to be able to really do this, so it's this whole, it raises so many questions of how do we actually solve this.
They've so much to do. They've just got so much to do, but I think it is about educating from a young age about how to keep this great natural machine that is your body in tip-top condition. And that's not necessarily about weight, you're right. It is about keeping it healthy, making sure it's got the right nutrients and food is taken in a balanced way, and all of those things.
It's the correct balance, isn't it? Like you say, Morgan, most kids do PE once a week, and actually, although they've tried to shake up school meals, you go in and there's still burgers and chips and all that.
It's easy.
Take away those options and make it compulsory to do at least one after school physical activity. Make that change rather than actually just getting some poor gym teacher to tell half the class they're fatties. Just change.
I'm sure that's not how it's done. Sorry to all.
It was.
It might have been in the old days, but I know it's not now because I know that from.
I think it's also, and I think what Kelda said was a really good point, is that of the after-school activities, is that across Surrey, kind of youth centres and outside provision that would normally be funded by local government have been cut, and it's that there is the provision of kind of extracurricular activities is really limited, which means that there's no real structure. There's a real lack of structured, relatively affordable kind of provision, unless you're going to play football and it's like your parents are willing to pay for certain things. It's really expensive.
If that was funded by part of the schools, and actually it was compulsory for kids to do that a couple of times a week. I mean, first of all, wouldn't it be really handy for parents that work 9 to 5 to have their kids?
Yeah.
And secondly, to have it in a safe, regulated environment with people that are trained to teach PE, where you're not having, football costs like, a couple of £100 a year for your kid to go and play football. Any sport costs a lot of money to do in their spare time. So to have that as part of the extra curriculum would be beneficial to everyone.
Absolutely.
And I think the government's, got to hold some of itself to account over this, because over the last 18 months, what's the first thing it stopped is sporting activities.
Yes.
And it's, kids have got out of the routine. Adults have got out the routine. In the first lockdown, we were encouraged to go out and walk, and we went out and walked. But we've got out of that routine again, and we need to get that routine going again to encourage everyone actually to do a bit more exercise. And like Morgan says, us as adults are just as bad. And we've got to get back into that routine of doing exercise and look after our bodies again.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Thanks very much. Thanks to Surrey Live for that article, by the way. We're going to try and pick up some more locally produced news stories.
Good idea.
And there's a lot going on in Surrey, so we'll focus
it's a busy old place, isn't it?
It is. It's a great place. Very busy, but great.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to everybody's second favourite part of the show.
Oh.
Are you ready for it?
Hit me.
Word of the week. Word of the week. Word of the week.
So bad. Oh.
Who's that? Is that you, Morgan?
You, Morgan.
No, I think so.
Okay.
Right. So say the word, because it's an Irish word today.
Oh.
You whack it on screen there. So it's broad.
Broad.
It means, can you guess? It means pride.
Oh.
And I just love this. So this is a postage stamp that has been released by An Post, which is our equivalent to the Royal Mail in Ireland. And isn't that a gorgeous stamp?
That's fabulous.
I'm going to get on to my sister and get her to buy me some. Yeah, I thought as it's the last day of Pride Month, it was a good word to feature.
Broad.
Yeah.
Broad. Right, got to remember that.
Yeah, so there's no silliness attached to it, but I just thought it was lovely. And I did really like the stamp.
It's a nice sounding word. I like
it. It's very
so
gentle, isn't
buy
it?
some and send them to us. She was like, but you can't use them in the UK.
Doesn't matter.
What did I liken them to? A commemorative pencil. You buy it to have and not to use.
I won the pencil. Yeah. It's exciting.
Oh,
right, okay, next.
Okay, now everybody's first favourite element of this show.
And Dylan's definite favourite.
Mm-hmm. Hey! Today we've got Brad from Newquay. Brad has been nominated by the other goats in his surf club. He's known to be a bit of a pro, and also you can find him out on the tiles most nights of the week. He is basically one of those about the town gentlemen who is so cool he doesn't know what to do with himself.
He's such a cool dude.
He looks great.
So Mike, as our guest, because this also goes out on radio, would you like to give a little descriptor of Brad there from Newquay?
Absolutely. Brad from Newquay is looking like a real cool dude with almost zebra stripes in looks, but the stripes match where the gorgeous yellow and gold tinted shades go. And it even looks like he's got his ears pierced to hold the shades on. But he does look like a happy goat. Brad is broad, as Jana says, and I think that is really cool.
I feel like I want to look through. I feel like I want to go and look at Brad's Instagram profile. I think he's got a killer Instagram profile.
I think he's got a checkered past. I think he's got some stories to tell.
I think you've just hit on something. As if we don't have enough to do in our lives, I think we need a Pride in Surrey Goat of the Week Instagram profile. We do. We need this. We need this. So if there's anybody watching who would like to be part of the Pride in Surrey team, who's got enough life left to create and run a Pride in Surrey LGBTQ+ online
I've just got
Instagram page.
An image of complaints going in of you painting goats in rainbow colours and pride flag colours.
We would never be cruel to a goat. So Abby loves him.
Yeah,
Abby's come along. Yana loves him.
Earlier.
Yeah,
loves him.
Yeah.
Happy goat.
Debbie's one of our neighbours here in Surrey Heath, and she lives just a couple of streets away and is a diamond in our community. So I'm just going to say a nice hello to Debbie.
Hello to Debbie Hudson.
She's a local hero down around here. And yeah, Abby and Yana, thanks for popping in. You've had a busy day because you've been off meeting people in Godalming.
Yes, Abby and Yana. Well, Yana is the head of community engagement for Pride in Surrey, and Abby is a very valued member of the community engagement team. And they've been in Godalming because this year we are holding our main event and parade in Godalming. Let me just put up a little graphic for you because graphics are always smashing and everyone loves them.
Yay.
This is our summer and autumn programme, everyone. So we've got Pride on the Road from the 16th to the 18th. Keep your eye out on our socials for the route. We'll be announcing that soon.
Oh, it's up. It's up. It's on the website.
It's up and it's on the website, and I am behind the times.
It's all right.
Pride Shine, 11th of September. You'll find us there creating a noise and being very, very proud. But the main event, obviously, that we're talking about right now, 25th of September in the beautiful historic market town of Godalming.
I'm really excited about it.
I'm really excited. So that is why our girls have been out there making contacts with the local businesses, community organisations, etc. in Godalming, just to drum up some support and to make friends, basically, because that's what we like to do at Pride in Surrey. We make friends. And Abby's just come along and said Godalming is awesome. So she's obviously had a really good day out making friends.
Godalming is lovely.
It's a lovely place, and I think it's going to be a great place for Pride. I could just visualize it all. It's such a beautiful town, and it's going to be fabulous.
Looking forward to it. Looking forward to it. And when's it coming on the road to Surrey Heath?
Oh, well, maybe, but not this year. So it's Godalming's year this time, but we'll see.
Sorry, I was meaning Pride on the Road rather than Pride in itself.
Pride on the
Road, 17th at 7 p.m. we should be rocking up in Camberley. So.
And we look forward to seeing you there in your Pride clerical shirt.
I've not got a Pride clerical shirt. I went for a Pride what's it called? Waistcoat.
Yeah.
What's the law on the collar, Mike? Does the collar have to be white?
It generally is, but I have seen people with Pride collars. I've been trying to get a Pride flag collar because I've seen some clergy with them, and I don't know where to start. So
wrap one of your existing white ones in a Pride flag, right?
You'd only get one colour though.
Have something up in the shop.
I'm going to get. We'll look into that for you.
Niche untapped market there.
Yeah, but I did get a Pride waistcoat, and my daughter said it's. She said to me, she said, "You look like a clown in that." Because it's just striped. It's amazing. It's amazing. And it was kind of, I'm not walking with you if you're wearing that.
No, I've seen your waistcoat. You've sent me a picture, and I think it's brilliant.
I think what you should do is actually wear it and walk them to school.
They'd love it though. That would be a quick.
They're teenagers. It's just not going to work, is it?
They'd be most embarrassed about you walking them to school, not what you were wearing.
I know. Why are you walking us to school? We're old enough.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll just say hello to Stephen, who said hi to Reverend Mike. So I'll say hi, Stephen.
Oh dear. And Yana
poor kids. They're not poor kids. They pick on me, Yana.
Right. Okay. Listen, boy.
Hang on. Stephen said he's seen a rainbow clerical collar, so you've got to get me one.
Right. Well.
Okay. We'll have a look. We'll do our best.
Next time you see someone, Steve, you need to tackle that minister and find out where they
Gently
tackle.
No, just go.
The person of God.
Rip it out.
Rip it out and say mine.
Yeah.
We do not actually authorize or
endorse violence.
Endorse violence towards the clergy.
And I think what's wonderful is I know of 2 or 3 of my colleagues that with myself will be at Pride in Godalming, and it'll be great to be there. So it's going to be good to see people at Pride.
And we look forward to seeing you there, Mike.
Fantastic.
Right, should we have a message from one of our friends?
Yes.
Who should we have?
Yeah, go for it.
Go on. I don't mind.
Oh. So A or B, boys?
B.
Yeah, go with B.
Okay.
I'm Zoe Lyons. Sometimes it's easier just to text. Text TALK to 88440. You're not alone.
Our friend Zoe Lyons.
You caught me there. I was caught off guard. I was doing something on my phone. I was trying to send a very important message, which I've been trying to do all hour.
Such is the magic of live streaming. Anyway, boys, thank you very much for joining us.
Real pleasure. Thank you very much for having us.
And we'll let our audience enjoy these smashing special edition credits that we made particularly for today's show.
Good night, gents. Thanks very much, and thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks to everybody who commented as well. I can't tell you what the comments do actually, and we're loving doing it live. It's lovely to know that you're there, and it's nice to be able to chat with you when we're live too. So
We'll play you out with our credits, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye.
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 Bye.